Hello, lovely people. Hey, Mac. Hey, MPC. Siobhan, how are you? Uh, it's good to see you. Um, the new year is going great. I think this is going to be a great year. I I know, right out of the gate, I heard people were already down on 2024, but so far, I'm optimistic. It's too early for me to throw in the towel. I hope your new year's starting off really well too, NBC. Um, I got a couple of episodes of The Middle Age out in January. I was hoping to get more of them out, but playing catch up, and also like at a big, crucial point of that story. I think I talked about that in the last stream, where a lot of things are coming to a head in the story, and trying to make sure that I don't find myself too far along and having not delivered on a key bit of information that would make it easier for people to figure out where the story's going. I feel like there's a lot of mysteries in the Middle Age where how is the story going to unfold? And I feel like I'm doing it right if 20% of the audience can guess the ending. If 20% can guess what's going to happen next, I feel like I've given them enough information. I would like it to be a surprise to 80%. If 100% can guess, then I feel like I'm not really doing my job. And if nobody can guess, that means I also don't think I'm doing my job. But a good proportion should know. And so I need to be able to give them enough intel to be able to figure it out on their own. I sculpted the following over here. This is for the next TTRPG book. I kind of erred on the side of making those heads a little big. I don't know if they're too big. It might reduce its sense of threat. Oh, thanks, man. So I think I'm going to already start working. I imported this over into Procreate, and I've been painting over it. And I think what I'm going to do is, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to shrink those heads down a little bit. Like the Hulk, if you make the head a little bit smaller, it makes the whole figure seem beefier and more threatening. So I'm going to bring those down a little bit. You'd think if the jaws were bigger that the whole thing would be more of a danger, more of a threat. But I feel like it looks like the puppy version of the creature. And I've got a few others that I started rendering, trying to set up ahead of time for the stream. And so I've set those pieces in place. I feel a little bit like we're doing a cooking show now, where I have everything's in the oven, and we're just going to be working on sprucing everything up. Let's put this spinning minis up here for a second, where I can move some stuff around. A little late start today. I had to put out yet another fire. Last week we didn't have a stream on Thursday because I was really busy writing and editing, which I just can't do on the stream. I have tried, and I've seen people do it. I don't know how they get anything done, because one eye has to be on the chat, and I don't know how you can, unless it's collaborative. I've seen some people who actually have collaborative streams where they're asking the people who are in chat for ideas. That's generally not going to speed me up. Where am I here? Also, I didn't post on Discord that we were going live. Again, putting out some fires right before we went live. Have I thought about doing sculpting tutorial videos? No, I haven't, NPC, because I thought I didn't really feel like I'm an expert in it. I mean, the sculpts you see here are me just fumbling through the program. I kind of feel like it's a lot like comics. It's all about aesthetics. There's a really nice reader who was on and tagged me on Twitter the other day, asking about can I give feedback on their comic, and I kind of fell back to my usual, which is just keep at it, because aesthetically, all I can ever say is, well, I don't know. It depends. If we're trying to figure out how the program works, I'm happy to coach people. But by the time my video gets released, there'll be a new version of the software, and something will have changed. So trying to do an online tutorial about how the software works, that seems to be asking for spending time to build something that is going to not be applicable soon enough. But if there's any questions about it, I mean, I try to discuss I try to focus on the things that are evergreen, like the idea that this little baby dragon here, the head is a little bit tilted. The idea that that we can breathe life into our characters by, breaking them off the 90-degree axes, things like that. And trying to have forward momentum with the character, like Sir Quimp here, he's kind of lunging forward, and trying to do that sort of thing. But as you've seen with a lot of these streams, these will take me weeks and weeks and weeks. And, I'm figuring it out along the way. But again, the same forward momentum with the figure. I know it's meant to be a static pose to fit on a small base. This guy will be a little bit different. His, although the hands are a little bit different, I try to add a little bit of flavor to them, a little bit of uniqueness. I don't think the smoke worked out. The idea that there's kind of this billowing smoke that's coming down beneath Bob, supporting him, because he's a character who floats, and that was hard to do, with the sculpt. But the tilt of the baby dragon's head, it would have been real easy. The back legs are symmetrical, but it would have been real easy to have to plant both arms straight down. But I thought having one hand up, one paw up on top of a skull would be fun. Plus, it's the juxtaposition of a cute character with a pile of skulls. All right, I'm going to post a little note here on Discord letting everyone know we're streaming, and then we'll get back to working on that illustration. Copy link. No, not go to link. Copy link. Come on. And everyone. And we're live. Let's finish a couple of illustrations. I'm optimistic that we can get these done, or at least move them pretty far along. And these are for the Meta Domain book, for the Prayer's Handbook. So we're going to work on the Hydrahedron, the sculpt I showed you a second ago. And said no. Okay, great. That's out the door. Do you have a sculpture commission price? I do not. I've been asked a few times now. It's very flattering that people have asked. I feel like I'm not in a place to be professional. To be a professional sculptor. Okay, why are we beeping still? Let's not have beeping. Quit that thing. All right. Sorry about all the little housekeeping here. Let's get our chat back. All right. So this is that sculpt. I've already done a little bit of work on here. You can see kind of outlines, little blue highlights, things like that around the jaws. But it was about this stage where I was working on, I thought the heads were a little too big. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. Nah, I'm going to live with it. I think it's okay the way it is. At least I think. Oh, yeah, I was trying to scale it down a little bit here. The main reason why I don't, and this is going to sound, this could sound very jerky, is I feel like I can't charge a fair price. I'm too slow. It is a thing where, maybe it wouldn't be that case as I get faster. I can imagine in a year's time I could take commissions, things like that. But as I get faster, as I pick up tricks, I've tried sculpting other people's characters. I sculpted one for Marty Bowman. It was Marty's a dear friend of mine. It had a very simple geometric shape, and that kind of lent itself to it. I also tried sculpting Jamar Nicholas's character Leon, and very difficult because the character has dreads, short dreads, and it's like, how do you sculpt those in a way that's convincing? It doesn't look like cylinders or springs or. So there's just different things that I've never sculpted, and I'm fumbling my way through as I'm like, okay. Just the other day I was sculpting something. I'm like, I've never sculpted. That was what it was, fur. Never sculpted fur before. How do you do that? And I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. But in 6 months, but it took me forever. In 6 months, I might know. Oh, well, just now I know how to do that. take me less time. So I sculpted this thing. I tried to light it in a very different way, because I wanted it to feel more gem-like, like dice, like D&D dice. Let me commission you. That's very nice of you to say. I honestly just don't think I'm there yet. Another fella named Tommy Gofton, who does a lot of really successful D&D projects, he asked about commissioning stuff, and we started talking. I feel like his stuff is in the fantasy genre, which might make my life a little bit easier, because that's kind of my wheelhouse. But I could definitely imagine at some point. So I'm going to put these two here in a folder. We'll call these blue highlights. I just want them organized a bit. I can spell. I set that other one to screen. The idea is that having two of them on top of each other, they'll screen on top of screening. But I feel like as a cartoonist, if you're asking about sculpting your own characters, Siobhan, that you'd be great. You know your characters inside and out. These programs aren't that tough. I mean, if I can figure it out, anybody can. I'm currently using Procreate to paint over a sculpt I sculpted in Nomad Sculpt. Now, Nomad Sculpt doesn't have a low poly mode, really. So what I did was I kept slicing it, and then kept reducing the resolution of it, and then adjusting pieces in places. It was pretty boring. But the head is mostly the same for each one of these creatures. Each head of the Hydra is the same sculpt. The jaw is a separate piece, so I was able to open and close that. And in terms of painting, I'm going to add more things, like I'm going to go through the whole thing and add shadows and all sorts of effects. But I don't know what I would ever charge for a sculpt. And in the end, it has to come down to, I know people say, oh, you charge whatever the market will bear. And I'm like, that's not right. It's more like, how many hours will it take me? And I'm fearful because I know that, as I mentioned before, one of the reasons why I taught myself how to sculpt was I just knew that I would be a pain in the butt. A friend of mine was working with an artist lately, and they ran into that artist's limit. You know, one edit too many, one request too many, and you don't know where that is until you find it. I had commissioned a illustration from an artist named Soriyama, famous for paintings of famously for robotic pinups, like cyborg women pinups kind of would be the thing, very airbrushed. And my comic series was self-published, but going over to Image Comics, and I thought, okay, Image Comics was known for its kind of over-the-topness, and it's not shying away from sexuality and things like that. Never beyond an R rating, never beyond a PG-13 rating, but definitely pushing it all the time. But I thought Soriyama would be great, and I had a villainess who was appearing in the story, a villain in the story, and I thought, okay, she'd be great to have illustrated in a Soriyama style. And the artist produced a piece, and it's gorgeous, except my series was all sci-fi. It was all ray guns and robots and rocket ships, and had the character leaping forward, and in the reference I said I showed a couple like the laser pistols, the ray guns in my story, and in the painting it was, and it did look like it might have been a very tight rough, certainly a first pass, but very tight, and the gun was not a ray gun. It was like an AK-47. It was like a serious assault rifle, like a modern day assault rifle, and just wrong. So she looked great. The armor looked great. The rendering, the lighting, everything about it had this kind of luminous quality that Sorayama brings to the pieces, and it's airbrushed and glints of metal, but an assault rifle. And I'm like, that's not. It's completely wrong. She might as well have had a typewriter under one arm. You know, it was like it's not only wrong, it's incongruous, and jarring. And I'm like, could you request? I'd like to request if they it's great, I love it. Can it be changed to like this? And the response was that they don't make changes. I'm like, all right. I paid them half the fee. I said, well, I can't use it. I paid them half the money for as a kill fee. Said, take the money. I appreciate your time. I'm sorry it's not going to work out. They had a good payday for a piece that never saw the light of day. But it just didn't go with my book. And I'm not sure how I ever could have fixed that. Oh, that layer set to multiply, is it? Oh, heavens. I need to create a new layer. I thought that looked darker. So I think as a similarly, I just knew that I would be I don't think I would be quite like that. Not that there's anything wrong with artists holding their ground. And there's a thing where it's like once you accept one set of revisions, do you just do an infinite number of revisions? But I just knew if I was going to hire a sculptor, I would be a bad client. Because I would be constantly asking for changes. Can you... Plus, these are my characters. These are my babies. It's like, they don't know the characters as well as I do. Nobody does. And so, undoubtedly, they would send something along, and I'd be like, oof. Can we move that? Or not even oof. More like, can you nudge that eye a little bit to the left? Can you nudge that nose just down a little bit? Micromanaging. It'd be awful. Now I know I'm at the pixel level here, and some of this won't matter. And a lot of it's going to get obliterated when I go in here and start adding these numbers. Which is going to be a thing where I'm going to have to put a movie on and just kind of not think about how much work I have to do. Yeah, this is so small, no one's ever going to see this except you folks here. Anyone who might be here. But I've been itching to do more YouTube videos about comics as I'm working more and more on the Middle Age. And it's been really nice. One of the things I think I could talk about was technically 2023 was a hiatus. I didn't intend it to be one, but given the amount of new episodes I produced over the course of the year, it might as well have been one. Except I was beating myself up. I never got to feel good. Like, oh, I'll come back in 2024. I hit the ground running then. I could build up a backlog. But no, it was just basically just beating myself up for a year. brush is this? Hey, it's a round brush. Good. But I came back to it, and make that one. And the response has been very kind. Not only that, it's resulted in a lot of new subscribers and people who are coming in and saying, I just binged the whole thing. So I do think that the basically the point of the video would be that once you have put in the years, I know it's a bad, nobody wants to hear this in a 101 class. But once you have put in the years, that buys you some leeway with the audience. You know, you basically have this library of material that they can look at and go, okay, this person is going to can deliver, has delivered, and we're just waiting for the next shipment. That sort of thing. People often talk about how webcomics or comics in general are a marathon, not a sprint. And I'm not. And you could say that just in as much as they're exhausting. I think people think about that in terms of they're exhausting. But I think it's more like it has to be a calling. I think it has to be a thing that you're just I don't know, just messed up that way. You have to be I don't know, deeply invested in that way of thinking and thinking of yourself as a cartoonist, thinking of yourself as a web cartoonist, and tying your identity in a lot of ways to being a cartoonist. I ran a marathon once, and it was at mile 17 where I'm like, I'm running a marathon, but I'm not a marathoner. There's a clear distinction. Because I thought, I'm never going to do this again. I don't want to do this again. I don't even want to finish these last 5 miles. Or 26.2, these last 9 miles. I've done 17 miles, and the last 9, don't care for them. Not really all that interested. And there's something about that. I do think there are some people who are doing comics, and I'm not sure why. And I don't know if I would have known that until I was running that marathon. I'd run the distance before. In my training, I had run a marathon. I'd run 13 miles out and 13 miles back to kind of break the psychological. I was running with a running group. We were raising money for charity, and we ran 13.1 miles out and 13.1 miles back. And the idea was to psychologically make it easier that day. Like if you had never run one before, and you go to the Marine Corps Marathon, which is what it was in Arlington, Virginia, through Washington, D.C., and through the Smithsonian. It's a lovely area. You got to do all that, and it's too daunting. But if you've done it before, kind of, okay, we've done it before, we can do it again. And but it was running that marathon that day. I was like, oof, I'm not a marathoner. But I think there's something about, I knew I was going to come back to doing the Middle Ages. As long as I'm still alive, I'm going to keep working on it. So I've sort of established a font with this creature where it's like the 2s have a certain look to them, the 1s have a certain look to them, and I want to make that consistent throughout. The 4s, the 4s aren't open at the top, they're the closed Fantastic Four style. Not sure what that's called. But I have to go through this entire creature, and every facet have to put a number on it. I know, I'm an idiot. Granted. And I'm putting these I'm doing all these in a black color, but they're on a separate layer, so I can load them as a selection later. Black is just so I can see it, and then later on I'll be able to make changes. But part of what I was thinking about that was the marathon element is kind of like working on this illustration. It's going to take a while. It's not, this is not the glory. But I think it's going to look cool when it's done. So, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed I don't mess it up. But part of it is taking breaks. I know that. Let me see, how does that look? Sometimes it's easier to see on the screen. So it's like if I work on this for a little bit, and then I can take a breather and work on some other things, like importing this from a 3D modeling program, some of the artwork becomes very pixelated, and I want to mitigate that. So I'm going to go through with a brush, and let's turn off the numbers for a minute. Go beneath the blue highlights. Now the blue highlights have to sit on top of everything, and I'm going to use that, like these blue highlights, like you can't really, that head kind of gets lost against the body because it's so complicated. So the blue highlights are there to help add some definition to pop that head forward. I'm going to brighten that further, and also put more shadows behind the head, underneath the head, so that it pops the head forward a little bit. Fingers crossed. I've also been, I think it'll be a good year. I was mentioning this at the top when NPC was asking about that. I feel like in the past, like I'll start a year and I'm like, oh gosh, how's this going to go? I've been largely beholden to my freelance clients. I've been a freelancer for 25 years, and it's tough. It's a lot of work, and there's a lot of mystery hanging over the whole thing, because I have clients and they're very good to me and they're very kind and supportive, but they you know, they're not always there. They don't always have work for me. And you know, when the economy tightens or changes happen, like suddenly they're not with the company anymore, they get promoted to someplace or they get a job someplace else, and they are no longer in a position to get me work or to offer me work, or basically there's nothing I can do to help them in their new gig, I'm out of work. And there have been periods in the last 25 years of freelancing where I'm like, I have no work. I have when the dot-com bubble burst, the first time it happened, when the housing bubble burst, second time it happened, COVID happened again. All these times where you've got clients and suddenly everyone's like, oh, the world is like, doesn't know what's happening. And the very first thing they do is like, if you do website work or illustration work, it's like that they'll go, we'll use clip art, or we'll use Squarespace. We'll just have a Facebook page. We don't need a website. You know, they'll do anything they can to economize and just to basically, you know, tighten their belts to weather this storm. For mixing metaphors there. In this metaphor, presumably the belt is connected to some sort of raincoat. But So in those periods, I have had no work. But this year, thanks in a big part to the gaming world and to my comics, I feel like I am, perhaps for the first time, you're never self-sufficient, but I feel like I've grown an audience for both the webcomic and the gaming audience that I can count on them in a way that I couldn't previously count on my clients. Again, nothing wrong with my clients. I love them to pieces, and I still service them all the time. The work I do for them, some charities, some philanthropic organizations, I'm very proud of the work I do with them. And I'm happy to be able to help them. But in terms of being able to pay my rent and get a good night's sleep, not being terrified about what will happen next. Freelancing is a lot like webcomics in that way. It's like you have to be like a little messed up or a little bit comfortable with the kind of situation you're putting yourself in. There's a lot of upheaval in the comic book world, which is kind of the one I come out of. I did comic books. I've been doing webcomics since '98, but I grew up reading comic books and making comics for my school newspaper and loving comic strips. And the comic strip world's kind of imploded. There are some success stories in recent years. Wallace the Brave, Phoebe and Her Unicorn. But by and large, they're very rare. And they're not exactly the way things had been in the past. The way things had been in the past is the comic strip was enough to support the comic and the cartoonist. Now they're sort of baked into, okay, we're going to do the comic and then we're going to collect them, and the collections will be part of the income, right? So they're already thinking about, this isn't just a single avenue for making money. You've got to have the comic, the websites it's on, the newspapers that have taken it, and the collections that will happen later on. So the whole, it's this multi-tiered approach or multi-pronged approach, as opposed to a single, just do a comic, put it in the newspapers, and that's enough money to live, and everything else is gravy. And similarly, in the comic book world, that whole setup is in flux. Joe Illidge is a person people should follow on social media and elsewhere. I've been talking about those upheavals, and they're I understand why I set up a certain light in this environment, and what it did was it's created very strong facets to the coloration of this creature, but I think I want to change that a little bit. I'm going to use my brush at 100%, and I'm going to marquee off this area. So I sampled the color adjacent to this facet, and I'm just going to outline it and then fill it with this color. Now I'm going to lower its opacity. Just hopefully it feels a bit more connected. I'm going to do that with a few other pieces here. And I don't like the stair-stepping outline. I have to fix that too. That's just part of 3D modeling in this very simple program. Again, the program I use is called Nomad Sculpt, and it's great, but every once in a while its limitations become apparent. And one of the limitations is when you export it, it can look very, very pixelated. A sample of that purple. And so now I have that opaque area, which I've lowered the opacity of a bit, so it's a translucent area, but it started opaque, lower the opacity of the whole layer. Now I'm going to take a soft brush, like a watercolor brush, and then just at the bottom, pull away some of that. So now it has a gradient to it that it didn't have before. It's less of a harsh line. As if maybe it's translucent. Maybe the tail itself is translucent, or maybe it's picking up other reflected bits of light here and there. I think that's a bit better. How are we doing on everything here? Hopefully folks are seeing this and we're alive and well. Back to the blue highlights. Oh, wrong brush. So we're still using the blue light. This is on a layer set to screen. And that's why it appears brighter than everything, because it's just sitting on top of a layer, and it's just going to basically subtract that color from the layer underneath. Or not from the layer, but from everything underneath it. I'm going to set another layer here to screen. Real tempted to use a big fat brush here, but so this is for a book called The Prayer's Handbook, the Meta Domain Cleric. It is a book for the 5th edition of Dungeons & Dragons. I've created it as a supplement, and then we kickstarted it. It was funded about 3 weeks ago, and currently surveys are out. Folks are answering them. And I have expanded it a little bit. Over the weekend, I added 2 more monsters to the book, which probably not advisable. Just because, you know, I could have just gone with the ones we had and call it there. But I really feel like if I don't include them, after I thought of them, I'm like, oh, I got to include these things. So I'm kind of outlining the shape. I don't think that'll look very naturalistic when I'm done, but I think it'll look cool. Fingers crossed. So I was organizing some older papers, and I found my character sheets from my Dungeons & Dragons character sheets from 1988, 89. So I will scan those and put them at least on Discord. I'll probably put them on social media. There's a lot of I don't know, belly aching about the new version of D&D removing some alignment restrictions to certain backgrounds, certain species. And it's a thing where a lot of the older fans kind of wanted it both ways. They wanted to say, on the one hand, dungeon masters can do whatever they want. They're not beholden to the rules, so you don't have to hard code this. And also, why don't you leave everything alone? Why are you changing everything? Or, you know, if Drow elves, I'm going to keep pronouncing them as Drow. I found my old character sheet where I not only was I was so uptight about that I included a pronunciation guide on the character sheet. Because the idea is there are these subterranean elves, most commonly called the Drow, who are like have onyx skin and white, pupilless eyes or red eyes. Like it's a really cool look. And they were awesome looking. But they were evil. They're the underground lair of evil spider elves. That lent itself to, ethnic caricature. And in a very bad way. But that didn't stop it didn't stop me from thinking those were the coolest characters in the world. And so my character was in 1988 a Drow elf, and I didn't want to call him. I wanted to rhyme with crow, not with cow. I thought crows are cool, and so I insisted on referring to them as a Drow elf. And if anyone argued, it said, "Are you arguing? That's how I pronounce it. Are you arguing with how I pronounce my own people?" And so I found my character sheet where it's a Drow elf, and it says there's a phonetic guide to how to say Drow. So I was always stupid, apparently. But whoever the dungeon master was when I was playing was a kid. Well, 18 or so. They, crows are cool. David, how the heck are you? I'm sorry I missed yesterday's stream. Thank you for sharing that dragon illustration you did. I loved it. Let me take that back. I continue to love it, not past tense. Set to a layer that's set to normal. I'm going to fix some of these issues here. I thought the opacity was a problem there. But I hope everyone's having a nice day. I got a lot done this morning. The Meta Domain, the Player's Handbook, is coming along very well. I did add, as I mentioned a minute ago, a couple of extra monsters, which I'm hoping to be able to work on today during the stream. I already sculpted them, and I realized I was sculpting them I was sitting in a coffee shop, and working on them, and I realized a little while later that it would have been real easy for people to look over my shoulder at me sculpting this very stupid-looking monster. So, yeah, I was oblivious to the odd looks I was probably getting. But I did find my old character sheet for my Dro Elf, and I'm excited to make that available. Also, there was so it was basically a bunch of older grognards, the older fans, who were just belly aching about, somehow I think that there seems to be a sense of, and I don't think it has anything to do with the game, I think it has everything to do with just getting old. They think everything's softer now. They think you're there's a sense of everything was more difficult when I was a kid, and why should it be easier from anybody else? And I feel like those games that they loved, they still exist, and some of them are actually still playing them. So if you prefer those old games, they didn't go anywhere. You play them. They're more upset that other people are playing things that are different. Like, yeah, so? But I took Thursday's stream off. I was writing, and I was on a tear. It was great. It was an excellent writing session. I might be taking more of those in the future. Sometimes when I get to the last leg of a project, it just takes some time to work out some of the details. Like the Meta Domain class has epiphanies, and I can't work on the stream while working on those. Like it's just a lot of writing. It's a lot of taking a look at my old notes and condensing them down into something that's usable, or expand, or it's a note fragment that I have to expand into something that will better explain what I'm getting at. The Meta Domain one in particular just takes so much time to work on because it's so complicated, or it can be complicated. I'm trying to make some simple things more complex. I'm trying to make some complicated things a bit simpler, and so that's just not great for a stream. Whereas a big luminous dragon, probably better for a stream. But what I realized the Meta Domain book was missing was some stuff that I had in the Intoximancy. It was just some fun side bits. But I'm also adding some things to this which I wish I thought of for Intoximancy. There are... Yeah, this strike is a sharp blue there. I think that'll look nice. Kind of blue, purple, a little bit of cyan in there. there are portraits of Meta Domain Clerics in the book. And what I'm doing is something that basically lends itself from the social media I did. Was I posted some of the pictures of the Meta Domain Clerics, and a way to illustrate who they are, I wrote a little bit about them. A really brief description, not even like a Twitter length, like saying this is the person, this is this is the player that they believe in, and what they think they know about the player. And those little illustrations and those little examples did so much to get the concept across. And so I have these illustrations, just like I have in Intoximancy, just like I have in Death Dealing, of just characters doing stuff, or magical effects, someone casting a spell or throwing a weapon. So now the caption is going to be more like, let me tell you about this particular person. This is not a person in the story. This isn't a person you're going to run across. This isn't an NPC of note. This is more just like flavor. And so the caption, adding captions where there weren't captions before, but not only adding captions in a way that better illustrates, in a comic book way, words and pictures, to be more than more than the sum of the parts. Speaking of really weird, silly movies, and hopefully not going to offend anyone with my Outlaw of Gore. I think it was a movie. The first one was called Gore, which is not available for streaming anywhere I can find it currently. But the Outlaw of Gore was riffed on by Mystery Science Theater, and I put that on the other day. It is a hoot. It is about a college professor who, I hope I'm not misrepresenting the story here. All you gore heads out there are gonna get angry at me. Please send your letters to David Peterson. The hero is transported to the world known as Gore, G-O-R, and it's a god-awful movie. I really recommend the Mystery Science Theater version. I saw that on Tubi, T-U-B-I. Highly recommended their version. And it's from the Mike Nelson era of Mystery Science Theater, which is not my favorite, but nonetheless. He seems snarkier than Joel Hodgson, but I think this movie is worthy of the snark, so... highly recommended. Go back to the blue highlight layer, grab that blue. So I've applied for my next gaming convention hopefully returning to GameholeCon, which is the convention I had such a good time at last time. It was my first gaming convention, not only as an exhibitor, but as an attendee. I've been to Comic-Cons that had lots of gaming programming, but not one that was dedicated to gaming. And it was great. It was a small event, small-ish convention. But not small, just compared to a lot of the other gaming conventions, it was pretty. It's not Gen Con or Origins or anything like that. It was the right size for a first con, and I'm excited to be back there. Someone said, "Oh, I should be doing the bigger conventions." I don't think my work, not the work. I don't think I have enough material yet for those events, but I'm getting there. Maybe 2025. Just a lot of those shows are really expensive to do. I'm kind of spoiled by the comic book world, where I'm quite a bit better known. In that I'm completely unknown in the gaming world, and I can be brought out as a guest for Comic-Cons, things like that, and so being able to show up as a cartoonist and as a game designer, I can do better at Comic-Cons. But I've applied for a table at GameholeCon. Fingers crossed that they have me back. It's all juried. It's not. I'm not in as a. They had retailer tables, but again, I don't have enough material for a retailer table. I've applied as an artist author, and so fingers crossed. And all the tables are limited. I think if you get in early as an exhibitor, you're more likely to get a table locked in. Whereas if you are an artist author, they probably sit on those names a little bit longer. And like if they see if Errol Otis wants a table, or if Jeff Easley wants a table, they're going to hold them for them, and not for me. So we'll see. I'm hopeful. I think part of it is also just trying to lower expectations for myself. I don't want to set up a table. If I have an artist table, I'm not trying to make a fortune. I'm not trying to, I don't know, it lowers expectations, makes it easier for me to wrap my head around the whole thing. Something's amiss. I'm going to try to fix it manually. Set this layer to multiply. Do a little bit of add a little shadow here. do this a different way. We're going to clear it. Stage brush. And this layer is set to multiply. If you can fill an 8-foot table at Baltimore, why can't you fill an exhibitor table at a gaming con? That's a very good question, David. Yeah, that's a very good question. I think it's about increased overhead and how much money I'm expecting and hoping to make in an event like that. Setting up as an artist author gives me a similar sized table, reduces my overhead a little bit, and then I'm in and amongst other artists. So even if the weekend is a bust, generally speaking, I'm having a better time. If I'm in a vendor table, and now I'm next to someone who's selling swords and someone who's selling dice. Not to say that those folks won't be interesting, but I'm less likely to talk shop with them. It will lose some of its social aspect. I think if it's in a Comic-Con, for instance, if it's going to be a situation where I'm going to be a exhibitor in and among other artists, versus what I've seen at a lot of these conventions, Comic-Con specifically, gaming shows, maybe gaming shows less so. There's the last Comic-Con I was at, there was like I said, there was like 10 publisher tables and artist tables. So total 10 tables in a hall that had a variety of vendors. 10 of them were creating comics creators, comics publishers. Small indie presses, things like that. And there were like 5 soap vendors. So we outnumbered the soap vendors, which was good. But there was lots of other people selling candies and handmade tchotchkes, keychains, and knitted items, and swords, and pop fun characters, and maybe I count the art print people among that group of artists. I don't know, maybe they're in a gray area. And there's just something about that where if it was going to be in an artist alley, like if they had an artist alley and I could apply for an artist alley table, I would feel better about that, as opposed to a vendor hall where I would be sitting up next to Chaosium or sitting up next to Goodman Games. At that point, I feel like you're now comparing their product to my product, and my product might have an indie vibe, might have a more personal vibe, maybe, but it will feel rickety or rinky-dink by comparison. Whereas I think in the artist alley area, in the artist author area, at least what I experienced in Game Hall Con, there was a sense of you slow down a little bit. You take your time to look at what's there. As opposed to the hard sell of people who are selling things that aren't theirs. The Goodman Games people and the Chaosium people, they were definitely people who were integral to those companies, who were there and speaking from the heart what they were selling. But then there were other tables of people who were just selling stuff. This might as well be fidget spinners to them, and I feel like that's a different thing. So it's not so much filling the table as much as being seen in the best light. and being seen in a light where might put my best foot forward. Maybe. I think in an artist alley you can be pleasantly surprised by what I do, and I think in next to a Marvel booth you might be. I might not. I just don't think there's less chance of cross pollination. There's less chance of a Marvel fan liking my stuff. In that kind of context, that's what I mean. But I think I would do, I do think I would do okay at Dragon Con. That's a big show. But I just think there's the sense, my experience when I was there, and the experience from talking to artists more recently. I love that they forbid AI. But I think I would do better at a show like that. And I honestly don't want to do too many shows. I don't know how you feel about them, but I'm kind of at my limit. If I'm going to do these things, I want to be really selective about them. The travel's a bear. The setting up it can be a pain. And I don't want to make that false choice. It's an easy thing to do. It's like, oh, I can make more money if I just stay here and set up a Kickstarter or set up a backer kit or something like that. Because you can do both. There's no reason that you can't do both. And it's also a thing where getting a feel for the convention, like I did fine at the Central Florida Comic Con. It's a fine show, fine little show. It's fractional compared to a bigger convention, compared to Heroes World or Baltimore. But I know if I brought the same stuff to that show that I brought to Heroes World, I'd have a very different event. And if I filled up my table at Heroes Con the way I did at Baltimore, I wouldn't do as well. But if I move a lot of my product to the side and fill my table with artwork at Heroes Con, I'll have an amazing show. It's just knowing what the vibe of the show, and the vibe I got from Gamehole Con is me being in the artist area was perfect. So maybe if I got more familiar with the options. Gary Con's really interesting because Gary Con doesn't even seem to have an artist alley at all. They just have guest artists and then they've got vendors. So you're either a guest or you're a vendor, and they don't distinguish between being an artist vendor, a publisher, sword vendor, Legos, whatever you're selling. You get your form in early, the check clears. You seem to be doing something at least remotely fantasy adjacent. And people seem to get you in. So my inkling would be, as a vendor, to try to set up as a vendor at Gary Con next year. It's sort of like I've only been publishing game stuff for 13 months, 14 months. When I show up there with 4 titles for the first time, 4 or 5 titles at Gary Con, I'm going to do very well. I will say, unlike Comic-Cons, at least Comic-Cons at my level, you travel in different circles than I do, David. Comic-Con at my level is not a networking event the way they used to be, but Comic-Cons used to be. My first Gamehole Con event convention, I was meeting all sorts of game creators and game designers. They traveled in Artist Alley, they checked things out, they weren't kind of sequestered away. And I think part of that was that it was a 4-day event, and the exhibitor hall wasn't that big. The exhibitor hall wasn't the thing. People went there to play games, and it had an exhibitor hall. And I think I like that balance a lot better than, frankly, most Comic-Cons, which are just pay admission to go pay more money. It's kind of a Disneyland, Disney World thing where you're paying money to enter a park to spend more money. And yes, there's some attractions, and yes, you can do panels and things like that. But actually, maybe the analogy is the other way around. Because at least the gaming convention had attractions. Comic-Con does have panels. You can go and look at stuff. But by and large, you're paying admission, I feel like, mostly to buy more things. At least the exhibiting artists hope you are. You know, everyone who's bought a table there is hoping that the people who paid admission will come in the room and then spend more money. Whereas at the gaming convention, it's like they're going there, they're paying admission to play games. Oh, and there happens to be a hall where you can buy stuff. That's kind of cool. I don't want to put too much highlight underneath the eyes there. I mean, I want to indicate that they're glowing, but I think I want to put more shadow under the eyes to make the eye sockets seem deeper. I've done a little bit of that, but so far everything I'm doing seems subtle compared to how chunky this guy is. Now all this is with a blue paint on a layer set to screen, and so it's having it basically peeling the color away. Alright, so what I did before with this dark area, I never quite finished it. The idea was to create that really dark area. I'm going to do more of this. And then use a light watercolor brush to pull away, to erase some of that. And the idea there is I'm going to do more of this throughout the piece, where without that area kind of feels like it's flat. And that pushes things forward, that heavy shadow. I'm going to do a lot more of that. That's 100% opacity. Cool. All right, let's pick up that color again with Steve's brush. And I'm going to do the same thing here to outline this shape. Sadly, I am not drawing that at 100%. I gotta undo. I wasn't drawing at 100% opacity. The idea is I want to draw at 100% opacity, and if I want to then lower the opacity later on, I can adjust the layer opacity. Like that area back here, which is all hit with a lot of bright blue light. I'm going to, I don't want to put shadow there because the blue light would obliterate the shadow. So I'm trying to put the shadow everywhere else. Clearly I have a bit of that shadow going on underneath the head there. I want to see if I can, if that's not baked in. So that must be a layer set to multiply. If I can find that layer. I'm going to, oh heavens. I'm going to delete that selection. That shadow I drew previously. And paint this new one in. Again, the idea is just to silhouette it off with a dark line. So draw around the shape. And fill the whole thing with black, or not black, with this dark, dark blue. And now I'm just going to go through here with the watercolor brush, a small watercolor brush, and erase, soften that edge. And then I'm going to lower the opacity of that. So again, the idea is just, hopefully, if this makes sense, help that face to pop forward. And I think at some point, these are the blue highlights. I'm just going to merge them all together. Keep working on it. I'm going to create another layer. Let's set the screen. I'm going to create highlights on the right here. And I'm going to use not blue, but this kind of warm vanilla color. Let's see how this looks. Change it to a round brush. Oh, heavens. think I hate that. I'm going to turn that layer off and on so I can see what damage I'm doing to it. No, I don't hate it. Soft brush to soften some of these. Get like a hint of that highlight, but I don't want it to be like an outline. There's an artist whose work I always like, Ken Stacey. He was always able to outline things in a very dramatic way that I liked a lot. I'm just trying to make this look like maybe it's a glint and not an outline. It's like very strong here in places. Maybe reduce it a little bit. I'm using a watercolor brush just to soften it. And anyone who's looking to go onto Blue Sky, apparently that social media site, that Twitter alternative, just removed all that invite code requirement they had. They basically had a beta where people applied to get in, and the early people every week or so would earn another invite that they could share with people to get into the system. As of today, they'd remove that invitation requirement, and everyone there is a little bit nervous about the place getting overrun with trolls. So I don't post on Blue Sky that often. I feel like my experience on Twitter got me to pretty gun shy about posting on Twitter. It feels like on Blue Sky, it feels like I'm a little guilty of this myself. That treating every social media site as a self-promotion place, you know. If you're an artist or a writer, you got to get on Twitter. You got to use that to promote yourself. It's like, that's kind of, and I fell for that. I have a promotion video about webcomics, and I talk about, social media is a good place to promote your work. And it feels like that's such antisocial behavior. I mean, it's not the most antisocial. We're grading on a curve here, so I don't think someone saying, "Hey, I posted a new episode of my webcomic," rises to the level of the real antisocial stuff that happens on those sites. But I just might be doomed to always using them wrong. Excuse me. So I don't post a lot there, but I do like following people on there. So I do like the sites, and Blue Sky's pretty good. I'm gonna highlight that right there. That feels right. I do think I'm going to add a sparkle to a lot of this creature. I don't want it to be like a gem, entirely like a gem dragon, but and I think having numbers written on it will help a lot. Like I've started. I did like the idea of a 20. Is it stepping on your head? It's coming along, I think. I'm taking the numbers off for now just because they can be a little bit of a distraction. So going back to the layer of screens. No, I'll put this in the right highlights category. I had put a few little magenta highlights on here, but I think I want to go a little bit further than that. So in terms of my conventions this year, I'll be doing, I just did the Central Florida Comic Con. I'll be doing the SC Comic Con, no relation, in South Carolina. That is in April. Then Heroes Con in Charlotte. And then the Baltimore Comic Con. I think I'll be doing the, is this layers at the screen? It is. Why? That color does not want to peel back at all. Normally when I put an identical color on top of itself and set it to screen, did I set it to screen or is it to lighten? Yeah, set to screen. Usually it will peel the color away. But whatever it is about this particular shade of magenta, it is impervious. So SC Comic Con, Heroes Con, Baltimore Comic Con, and fingers crossed for Gamehole Con. And that's my conventions for the year. Also the Daytona Beach Comic Con. That's my local show. That is honestly 10 minutes from my house. That is generally a very small show. About as local as it gets. Man. something I want to do. A layer above all the highlights. This is gonna be weird. Actually, no. I can fix this. I'm gonna use a very strong, solid eraser to erase some of the highlights I put on this kind of raised arm of the creature. Because what I want to do is I want to better blend the forearm and the upper arm together. There's clearly a hard line where I created this kind of... It was very tough to try to sculpt and then make any sense of these kind of geometric shapes, and then simplifying them to the point where they started to fall apart. Any smaller and suddenly whole sections of it would vanish as it was attempting to kind of remesh the thing with the smallest numbers ever. I did find at the minimum you can remesh something in Nomad Sculpt is 5. I don't know how that relates to the circumference. That doesn't mean 5 polygons. It just, I have no idea how the math, what that number specifically represents. But at 5, it would often throw a lot of material out and become very chonky. In this case, lower numbers like 10 seem to be a sweet spot for creating a kind of a faceted effect. Hey Dan, how are you? And so I'm going through and gonna tighten these up. Dan, good to see you. Dan Taylor, ladies and gentlemen. The head honcho behind Zero Level Media. Well, I hope your puppy is okay, Dan. Alright, so I had that gold highlight. I'm going to use more of that. Along the leading edge of this foot. I was just talking about the various conventions this year. I know you're doing GaryCon and Gen Con and all the conventions. I'm only doing a handful of Comic Cons, and I put in an application for Gamehole Con. Fingers crossed. I think I'm at that point in the career, in my game making career, where I'm trying to make a name for myself. We're trying to make a name for my products. Trying to get a presence at these conventions, but people don't know who I am at all, and there's probably 100 people just like me who pestering them for tables and things like that. So I try to be very patient and understanding as they try to sort through all that stuff. But the response to my next one, Nibblemancy, the sign-up sheet over on Kickstarter is going very, very well. We had a bunch of new signups in the last 24 hours to make me think somebody somewhere gave us a shout out. That or more people are checking out Zine Quest and just queuing up. Just saying, look, digging through things and stumbling onto it that way. I took part in the Make 100 Zine Quest a couple of years ago, and I felt like it didn't do anything for my numbers. Like, I felt like the tag was not helpful at all. But there are some amazing Zine Quest events. If people haven't checked out Zine Quest over on Kickstarter or Zine Month, stuff on BackerKit and Crowdfunder and places like that, some amazing projects. There's one I just backed called Grotten, Grotten. I think there's some umlauts in there. And simple 1-bit design, and I love it. It looks like the old Macintosh SE, Mac Plus, 1-bit dungeon games that they had back then. Like Realm Z maybe was one, and a few others. Really cute, simple. And there's others which are like full-on RPGs and low cost, definitely worth checking out. I think I'm going to be digging through that, trying to find some new stuff. The folks over at World of Game Design had a video pointing out some of their favorites. I keep seeing some listed, and the trouble is I got to go through them and go, okay, is there any AI in this thing that I have to avoid before I give it a shout out or recommend it to anybody? Just erasing some of those highlights now. Just put some highlights in there and then peel them back a little bit, so they're not quite so obvious. Anywhere they come to a point, like right there on this foot, I'll probably put a highlight, like a bright white little ting of light. They're called little tings of light. I work on this gray background because it makes it a lot easier for me to see the highlights and it better represents the kind of watercolor effect. I'm going to put like a splotch of watercolor underneath it and slap the artwork on top. So basically this thing will be a transparent item, kind of built with two layers. There's going to be a layer with screening effects. Usually if there's a kind of a smoldering fire effect or a glow of some kind, I have those. I export that as a separate Photoshop file. Then I bring in the main artwork, transparent background, and then the glows, and I bring them in and align them with each other inside InDesign and place them both down, and then I set the glow layer to screen. So it still has that effect. So if I put any other effects underneath it, like a watercolor or there's a paper texture or even text, if it goes underneath that glow, the glow will, anything below that screen layer will be screened a little bit by the smoke or the fire or whatever. So far that's been working pretty well. I think I have to put some of this yellow glow on some of these kind of crystalline horns. Like it's missing. I really like the kind of magenta effect we have there, but I think it really needs that yellow glow. Like, one thing I do not like. I'm going to get rid of this blue glow here. Go back down to the flattened. Every once in a while I export the whole, I flatten everything and then I create a new file and work from that. I'm just going to bring this neck back a little bit here so it doesn't create such a tangent with the that horn. Better. All right, where was we? How we doing on time? 6 o'clock. All right, folks, I'm going to take a little bit of a break here. I will be back in 5. My cat is demanding attention. I got to figure out what's going on. I'll be back here. And well, so far, so good. Some good progress made. Thank you all for being here. I'll be back in a little bit. Here's going to be some wonderful artwork by some amazing artists. Fantastic cartoonists. And yeah, check it out. What else I'm going to do? I got it. Before I take the break, layer set to normal. This area that's highlighted there is just wrong. Is just wrong. So let's do this. Let's take that color. So it's 100%. We'll fill this in 100%. I feel like that bright area right behind the leg, that forward leg, was creating a weird effect. I'm going to darken that a little bit. And I could put that whole area in shadow, but I think I'll do that now anyway. But starting with this darker set of facets, I'll show you the before and after. So before, there's that effect behind the leg, and I feel like it's doing weird things to the shape, and it's the neck isn't popping forward. That there, suddenly the neck pops forward, the leg moves forward. I think that's a lot better. All right, folks, I will see you in a little bit. Enjoy this little slideshow, and I see you getting some spam on the YouTubes. Great, that's great. All right, folks, I will see you back here in a little bit. folks, and we're back. Let me see if I can do this. Okay, is everybody here? I hope everyone's having a beautiful Tuesday. My name's Steve Conley. I'm the writer and artist of the webcomic The Middle Age. You can see my webcomic over at middleagecomic.com. It's also on WEBTOONs and Tapas and GoComics. And I'm working on an illustration for this guy right over here. This is a Hydrahedron. It is is a monster. I don't want to judge. It's a creature. It's a creature which will appear in my next book, which is called The Prayer's Handbook, the Meta Domain Cleric. It is it's a cleric subclass for clerics who think this all might be a game. And production's coming along very, very well. I'm super happy with it. And I basically just need to create more artwork for it. This is one of the pieces. This is one of the monsters that's in the book. And I had the toughest time drawing him, because a lot of the pieces are sculpts that start in Nomad Sculpt here on my iPad. And it kind of does two things for me. It gives me a basis to start from. It doesn't really give me it. I have to make it. I gotta build the shape to. I have to sculpt the thing. But what I like is that it gives it a solidity. It lets me experiment and play. And then it also gives me the basis for a figurine that can be printed and made available. So I think this one will be printable. I'm going to try to print the thing. We'll see what happens. I really messed with the geometry to try to give it this look that it would be like basically like a die, as if it started as a polyhedron. And another one here is that screen. I want a thicker brush for this. But over the last couple of days, I was like, oh, I have to add a couple of more monsters to this, because I just had this little epiphany that kind of an untapped angle with which to play with this whole subclass. One of the most fun things in the book so far is this. What is flashing over there? Something's happening. Is the epiphanies that the clerics get with each level. Now, I'm not sure how much. There's a page in the book which I still have to write. The basics, the guts are there, but I have to add something to it, because it's a page called what was it? Can we be real for a moment? And it's written kind of to dungeon masters and to players about playing this character and how to play this subclass in a way that is friendly to the table. Kind of an argument to the dungeon master. Here's why I think this will be a good fit, no matter how you play it, because it's easy to. It'd be easy to think when people think of playing meta in D&D. Often that means that you're not playing it right. Your character is often. I see this happen all the time. It happens all the time in D&D. It's sometimes for comedic effect, like someone's going to make a reference to a pop song as their character's talking, and it's funny and cute, and the table enjoys it, and that's meta. That's the outside world creeping into the game. But sometimes it's when the player knows something like, oh, this is undead, and they've been playing for 10 years, 30 years, and they know that undead, generally speaking, aren't affected by necrotic damage, or they can't be poisoned, or something like that. Like they know, oh, don't try poisoning a zombie, because they don't, it's not something that the character would know. Your character's brand new. They've never seen a zombie before. They don't know anything about zombies. They've never even, they never read stories about zombies. The whole idea that zombie might be a bad example because, literature and lore might have that zombies throughout them. But some other weird creature that you come across, and your character would have no idea anything about this, and the first thing your character would do in most situations was hit it with a firebolt. Burn it with fire. But your player knows that the creature is immune to fire. And so the character factors that in. The player can't help but know that what they're about to do is useless. But the in-character thing to do would be to be useless. As a player, you can do that as like, okay, I'm going to hit it with a firebolt. So we can establish that fire does nothing to it, okay? And then we can just move on, and we can basically take the fact that something we knew, we now know in-world, in-game. So that's how meta's bad. So in this context of a character class, a subclass that plays around with meta knowledge and the idea that this is a game, how do you play that in a way that doesn't ruin the game for everybody? And it is not entirely, I don't think, obvious how to do that. Because there's so many different ways to play meta. For the most part, what it means is just, breaking the fourth wall. Bending it. Whether it's like Abed in Community and everyone just rolls their eyes. There's this guy thinking he's in a TV show. Or Deadpool. Or Neo. The Matrix. Or if you want to look at it from the bad guy's point of view, a Moriarty. Or I forget the name of the evil characters inside the Voyager holodeck. So many examples of meta, but trying to find the one that doesn't break the game. And just having that discussion so that, you set expectations. Because one of the things about role-playing games, probably discussed less than some of the other elements, is that when you pick a character, you're basically asking all the other characters to buy into that mythology. Like if you're going to play a cat character, a tabaxi, and you're all in the tavern, and in walks Scott's tabaxi character. All the other players have to ask, have we seen a tabaxi before? Is this weird? How much time is spent exploring the weirdness, or do we just accept it like we accept halflings and elves? And as D&D gets weirder, everybody who plays wants to play something weird. Oh, what is going on here? That's a different... Something's amiss. And I've heard people poo-poo that. The idea that, oh, everybody wants to play a cute, cuddly character, or something that violates their badass fantasy Frank Frazetta world. The latest thing that was going around about Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro was posted over on the Discord. Links to the doob-de-doo. Talking about how Hasbro may have, fired their books division or something like that. It was a weird article, and then saying that they took that element and paired it with a job posting. The layoffs were part of all the Hasbro layoffs that happened right before Christmas, which suck. And then pair that with a new position that was created for hiring VP for like digital publishing or some such. And an effort there to connect the dots, which I'm not sure connect. There just seems to be a whole thing about looking for the worst possible interpretation of every tea leaf. I think it's pretty clear that Hasbro wants to do more with digital. Of course, they do. But the one thing I haven't seen is that anyone suggesting that the books lose money. And then there's all this stuff. It's just kind of having it both ways. Where, oh yeah, they're always going to have books. There's always going to be D&D books. But look at this evil thing that's being cooked up. And I'm like, I don't know how we reconcile those two bits. I don't know how we reconcile the fact that... Or how you make the case either way. Like, if they're going to get rid of the D&D books, if D&D books are going to become less popular, because again, they keep saying no matter how much of a naysayer or a... whatever the opposite of a Pollyanna is, as much gloom and doom is being projected, and I think the only thing that's certain is that if they can make money, they'll do it. And I feel like the books make money. So it would be illogical for them to stop making books. They'll do everything else. They'll still make... I think they'd want to make collectibles. And what's really interesting is in the Professor Dungeon Master video that was quoted, he was comparing it to like, well, why wouldn't they do a Kickstarter? I'm like, because to me, the Kickstarters raise such little money. I mean, yes, they make a lot of money for a little creator like me or for a small team like Matt Colville's company, but those numbers don't matter to Hasbro. They're nothing, If I sell 477 copies of something, I am thrilled. But if Hasbro had Matt Colville numbers, they would be like, we're dead. We're absolutely dead. Even if they had a multiplier of Matt Colville's numbers, they'd be like, well, what do we... I guess we all have to... I guess we're closing up shop? I don't know how they... What I wanted was I wanted to have that blue. I mean, I like the faceting that's going on there, and that some of it's that warm color because I had a yellow kind of a warm light in there. But I want to give it more of a blue to separate the teeth from the interior of the mouth. Oh, I'm sorry, the jaw from the interior of the mouth. It's weird. The second you start talking about like Hasbro, if you say anything other than the devil, you're kind of, oh, you're a sympathizer. And I'm like, no, they're the devil. I just don't think that every I worry that every prognostication or everything that happens out of them, we're just going to jump on it. Because my big worry is that it gives them cover. We saw this with the Indestructo Boy. He accused a piece of artwork of being AI, and the artist came forward and said it is not. But, you know, it's like you want to call them on the stuff that's legit. And I also, I'm kind of saddened that some of the channels that I used to really enjoy, where they would talk about gameplay, spend a lot more time chasing clicks, it seems. But it's tough because I think at some point, if your channel makes money, I mean, why wouldn't you do more of that? That's the incentive system. That's the, you know, if you kill monsters, you level up, and suddenly you just want to kill everything. If you get, every time you get gold, you level up. Okay, so you want more gold. So they're in the boat now of like, oh, right. This is the slog part. We're bouncing back and forth here. But I do like that they're holding Hasbro's feet to the fire. But I kind of think they'd be better off talking about all the cool stuff coming out of Zine Quest. I like something that Sly Flourish Mike Shea had said. We were talking about just how Hasbro is just another 5e publisher now. Thinking about it in those terms, I think that's probably right. Boy, hard to see what's happening there. Some of these very small facets. I'm not going to try to write a number. I'm going to, you know, I'll hint at what the number might be, but it's so small. We're talking about pixels, so it's kind of irrelevant what the number is there. And I couldn't tell what was happening on YouTube. It looked like, I wasn't sure if someone was trying to spam or what, but it seemed like the system blocked it. So I don't know if there's a question someone had on YouTube. By all means, put it in chat. If it's spam, then you reached the wrong guy. No one's home. I'm going to cheat and copy and paste that one, slide it over. And there's a bigger. Sometimes it's easier to see on the stream screen than it is to see on my own iPad. Yeah, I don't have the brightness on my iPad turned all the way up to save battery life when I'm working out and about. Is that one big area? Maybe. No, it's not. I feel like there's a line that's there. Even if it's hard to see. Fix that too. I feel like the twos I'm doing a bit more. Some drop frames there. Not sure what's going on.
Something's wrong.
I do like that it actually, having this on screen here actually is helping me because I can double check what I'm seeing with a different viewpoint. Like the colors on that are so much brighter. I think that's a single shape, or is it the shadow? Hard to see. Let's see how this looks. And so the idea would be to select this now and try filling it with something else. See how it comes together. I can't tell. So one approach would be then to tap, 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 and then select the original one, and clear, select and clear. No idea how well this will read when printed, but maybe it'll look good. How we do on time? We're doing great. But I gotta go through the whole figure and put in numbers. Boof. All right, I can do that. What'll that take? One Avengers movie? Turn my brain off and just work on that. Well, turn my brain off more than it's already turned off. For the eyes, lighter screen. I have this golden glow here. I think I'm going to add a little fur, because not a lot of yellow. I don't think it has to have like the Crayola 8-pack in here of like every color, but I do like adding a little extra fire to some of this. So it's not just a, a Gaussian blur of the glow, but actually just kind of something a little more interesting, a little fiery. A little Kirby crackle around the eye, maybe. So soften the pixelization. So much more to do. I got to do a lot of numbers. I got to do a lot of... there's a lot more. But it's coming along. At first I thought I had to shrink the heads down. I don't think I need to. I'm fine with them the way they are. I still have to illustrate the hatchling. That's a whole other little illustration. So I'm going to spend all this week working on more illustrations. There are worse problems to have. Alright, so this was the sculpt. I could put it in matte cap. You can see the basic shape of the thing. You can see here the mistake I made, which was the jaws are actually a separate color. Had not intended that. I knew I wanted there to be kind of a warmish tinge to it, like a little alligatory. But the fun thing, you actually can see some accidental stuff here where some of these spikes, again, just because of how I had to corrode the mesh, they just kind of started poking out in places. I'm like, that's fine. Somewhere along the way, I tinted the top of these teeth the same pink color as everything else. Absolutely an accident. There are some highlights on here, like a little splash of a more vanilla color. Not, it was mostly there just to catch a little more light when I lit it. But let me open up another piece. So I can still work on this one before we run out of time. And it was a case where, working on these, I thought I really want to be able to have minis that people can print. So either ideally just publish at home. I don't imagine I'm going to go to the manufacturing company and try to get these made as kits. But anyone with a 3D printer should be able to print these things if they want. I'm going to do something here. I want to make sure no. Usually I want the front-facing vertex only activated, so I didn't want to divot that part, but I don't mind tearing into this thing a little bit more. Use the trim tool and the lasso tool. Let's just cut that right there. Just a little extra. Smooth it out. Now with the crease tool, pressure way low. I'm just going to accentuate some of these striations. Almost all these were just put in with the clay tool, just over and over again. But for this one, I am going to hit front-facing vertex only. This is this back cover is so thin that if I turn that off, it would start pressing through the material, and then suddenly that whole shape would start to fall apart because there's just not enough to hold it together. Too big a brush. Undo. Now the illustration won't see the back of the book at all, but for purposes of a mini later, it'd be good to have this part done. So I'm just going to add like kind of an angled erosion, corrosion. And I have the clay tool on, smallish brush, medium intensity. I'm just going to scrape in these shapes. And this is building up the clay. And then whenever there's going to be a weakness in it, like whenever there's like a divot, I'm going to accentuate that in a moment with the clay tool, with the crease tool. I'm going to put this in randomly and then let it guide my hand. But I figured what it was missing was. What the Meta Domain book was missing was some book creatures, very similar to the way the Intoximancy subclass had all sorts of cool drinking vessel themed monsters. I thought I should do some books, some evil books. I was halfway through this thing. I'm like, how close is this to Evil Dead's Necronomicon? That's pretty far. I mean, it's still got a face on there, but I think you'd find these at every Ren fair, probably. All right, let's hit save. Oh, no. Save. Want the crease tool. Front facing vertex only at this point. Increase the intensity. And using some of those, that splitting on the edges of the book there, like any of those divots, kind of lean into those. Let those send the cuts through the book. Okay. I did something fun with this I hadn't done before, which was, so I run a crease down an object and then invert the function of the crease and then run that along the edge to kind of sharpen that edge where the crease is. It creates a really neat effect. Like it highlights the crease. All right. What are we doing? More beeping. Stop the beeping. So I'm going to use this as, what color do we want the cover of the book to be? I got to light the thing first. We're going to turn off our reference. That was a really weak reference. I just just scrape these things together. I'm very happy with how it looks though. I like the idea of having the pages. Oh man, which way do I want this thing to go? Well, this will be fun. When you use the drag tool, it will drag everything that's been joined together. Let me show you what I mean. I use the drag tool. So far, all these pages are individual items, but they've been joined together. If I use the drag tool on them, they'll all move together. If I use the move tool, it will only move the one I've selected. So, I mean, they're also currently selected, but the one the pen tool hits. So I can just move one or two of these up at a time, counting on the move tool to pull those out. Pretty great. Okay, so parchment and then like a dark green cover. Let's do a dark green cover. Nope, we want to select the cover. Roughness tends to flatten it out. Metalness tends to make it shiny. I don't think roughness and metalness are the opposites this program thinks they are. All right, now Let's get some lights in here. Warmish light. We'll add a blue light. Of course, we're going to add a blue light. Spotlight. Bright blue. Very intense. Add a view. Saving a camera view means that we can snap back to this position whenever we want. This paper for a moment. I'm gonna make it a little grayish. But I'm going to darken up behind these eyes. So just that shape has got that fill. Let's get a few more lights in here. And I think the blue light is just not quite blue enough. And elevate it. And expand it a little bit, maybe a little more. Now if I turn off shadow, the light will actually go through every other object, so we'll catch a little bit of blue on the inside of the eyes and the teeth here, I think. Yeah. Completely unrealistic, and I love it. I wonder about this green. I wonder if I think I want to make it, it's a little too Play-Doh. I'm putting some of that green inside that mouth area, and then I'm going to darken it some more, lowering the opacity a little bit, I want to have that heaviness in there, but I don't want it to be just kind of a flat area. I want it to have some... I like the idea that it goes to pure black, like it's like a vacuum. Ooh, but that makes an interesting thing. I think I want to have a few pages sticking out below the book as well. That would make the a complete emptiness behind the eyes even weirder, maybe? But that would mean dragging these guys up. We'll worry about that when it comes time to printing these things as a mini of some kind. I think that part won't matter so much. I like the green. I think the idea would be when I get it into Procreate, I want to add... No, let's do that now. Let's do it now. I'm going to select this green color. Let's get a red in here. Light opacity. A little bit of red, right? So it's not just all this flat. I think it'll make it look less plasticine. But I have to do a lot more once I get it into Procreate. Try duplicate. I like that. I'm always gonna like that. I'm always gonna like adding more blue. And the pages themselves, I'm going to have to add some sort of writing and scribbling to, and sort of like arcana, like glyphs and things like that. But I'll worry about that in the painting process. Okay, we're going to save this here. And that will wrap us up. Thanks to everyone who was here. I understand Telemont mentioned over on the Discord that he was having trouble getting in. So I appreciate everyone who was able to come by this evening. I appreciate you. And yeah, I think we did some good stuff. Weird stuff. It's going to be good for the book. I appreciate everyone who wants to... if you want to follow me and The Middle Age, you can check out middleagecomic.com. You can sign up to be notified. Oh, thanks, Fod. I appreciate it. If you want to sign up to be notified when my next one goes live, Nibblemancy, you can go to nibblemancy.com. And so far, I'm really happy with the Prayers Handbook. I think this is going to be the best one yet. It's going to be the silliest one yet. But I keep adding more work to myself. So look for a big Kickstarter update from me, because we'll also be locking orders. So anyone who hasn't placed an order yet, you want to go to the pre-order store. If you go to prayershandbook.com, that'll take you to Kickstarter. Click on the pre-order link. That should take you to Backer Kit. Or if you go to my own website, you can order the digital stuff and pre-order digital there, and quite a few people have done that. So I appreciate that. But yeah, so far so good. Or if you just want to wait for the next Nibblemancy campaign, you'll be able to add most of this stuff to your order. The only thing you won't be able to add is the Grognard t-shirt. I don't make a lot of t-shirts, and if you want to get one of those, the only way to get it is through this campaign. I certainly won't be reprinting them myself. I mean, who knows if I can find another vendor later. That would be awesome. But fun. Dan, David, thank you all for being here. Who else did we see? Max, NPC, Siobhan, thank you for being here. You're all awesome. I'll see you all on Thursday. Look for another Kickstarter update from me. If you're over on the Patreon, you're going to get some good stuff tomorrow as well. There's another magic item I cooked up. It doesn't fit within Meta Domain, doesn't fit within Nibblemancy. It's this other thing. I think it's something that every dungeon master will want to give their party at some point. How about that? Something every dungeon master will want to give their party. Maybe not every. Yeah, let's say every. Let's have bravado before we go out. See you all on Thursday. We're not going to raid anybody. I'm just going to log off here and go drink more coffee.